The notifications started just after midnight. One by one, phones lit up across living rooms in California, New York, Texas, and Michigan. Il Volo had finally announced their 2026 world tour, the moment thousands of American fans had been waiting months to see. But as the excitement peaked and fingers scrolled through the dates, something felt wrong. Rome, Barcelona, Buenos Aires, São Paulo, Melbourne. The list went on, cities stacking up like postcards from a dream. And then, nothing. No Los Angeles, no New York, no Chicago, no Miami. The comments came fast and furious, flooding Facebook groups and YouTube channels with a collective disbelief that quickly curdled into something sharper. Did they forget about us? One longtime fan typed, her message appearing in 3 different groups within minutes. Another wrote simply, "I can't believe this." The confusion was immediate, but the hurt took longer to settle in. A slow, sinking realization that maybe, just maybe, the tour everyone had been promised wasn't going to include them after all. For fans who had followed Piero, Ignazio, and Gianluca since their debut on Ti lascio una canzone in 2009, who had traveled hundreds of miles to see them perform, who had built friendships in theatre lobbies and hotel lobbies waiting for a glimpse of the trio. This wasn't just disappointing. It felt personal. It felt like abandonment. How does a world tour announcement leave an entire continent feeling invisible? How could a group so beloved in the United States, a country that had championed them, bought their albums, filled their venues, and made them household names, seem to overlook the very fans who helped build their career? Were American supporters truly forgotten? Or was there a deeper story hiding beneath the surface, one that no press release or social media post had bothered to explain? The silence from the official channels only made things worse. No clarification, no timeline, no reassurance. Just a growing sense that something had gone terribly wrong, or that decisions had been made behind closed doors that fans were never meant to understand. This is the story of what happened when Il Volo's 2026 tour announcement became a flashpoint for confusion, heartbreak, and a fan base that refused to stay quiet. By the time you reach the end, you'll understand not just what went wrong in the eyes of those who felt left behind, but why the wound cut so deep, and whether hope still exists that this story might have a different ending after all. There's a reason American fans of Il Volo don't just show up. They show up with stories. Walk into any of their US concerts and you'll find women who've been following the trio since the beginning. Mothers who introduced their daughters to the music. Entire friend groups who plan their year around tour announcements. These aren't casual listeners. These are people who have woven Il Volo into the fabric of their lives, who mark time by album releases and tour cycles, who cry when the lights dim and the first notes of O Sole Mio fill the air. The relationship between Il Volo and their American audience isn't new. It's a love story that's been building for over 15 years. When Piero Baroni, Ignazio Boschetto, and Gianluca Ginobili first arrived in the United States, they were teenagers with extraordinary voices and a dream that seemed almost impossible. Italian classical pop crossover, sung by boys barely old enough to drive? It shouldn't have worked, but it did. American audiences fell hard and fast, not just for the music, but for the humility, the charm, the way these 3 young men seemed genuinely shocked that anyone cared. They performed on talk shows, sang at major events, and slowly built a reputation as one of the most reliable live acts in the genre. Their tours sold out theaters from coast to coast, not arenas perhaps, but intimate venues where every note mattered and every face in the crowd felt seen. For many fans, attending an Il Volo concert became a tradition. There are women who've seen them 10, 15, 20 times. Some travel across state lines, booking flights and hotels months in advance just to be there. They know the set lists by heart. They know when Piero will hit that impossible high note, when Gianluca will flash that boyish grin, when Ignazio will lock eyes with someone in the front row and make them feel like the only person in the room. These aren't just performances, they're reunions. The same fans show up year after year, recognizing each other in line, exchanging stories about where they were when they first heard Il Mondo, sharing photos and memories like a family gathering around a table. The bond runs deeper than music. American fans supported Il Volo through every career pivot, every artistic risk, every moment of doubt. They bought the albums, streamed the songs, defended them in comment sections, and championed them to anyone who would listen. When the trio competed in the Eurovision Song Contest in 2015, American fans stayed up through the night to watch, voting from across the ocean as if their own children were on that stage. When they performed at major US events, Radio City Music Hall, the Hollywood Bowl, the venues didn't just sell out. They became sacred spaces where fans felt like they were part of something bigger than themselves. And Il Volo seemed to understand that. They talked about their American fans with genuine affection, thanking them in interviews, acknowledging the support that had carried them through difficult years. They came back again and again because they knew the audiences here weren't just consumers, they were believers. So when the 2026 tour was first teased, when whispers started circulating that something big was coming, American fans didn't just hope they'd be included. They assumed it. They had earned it. They had been there from the beginning, and surely, they wouldn't be left behind now. But assumptions, no matter how reasonable, don't always survive contact with reality. The announcement landed like a champagne cork, popping at a celebration no one had been invited to. Il Volo's official social media channels released the tour dates in waves, region by region, building anticipation with each post. First came Europe, major cities across Italy, Spain, France, and Germany, the kind of marquee stops that made sense for a group with deep roots in the continent. Then Latin America, with dates in Argentina, Chile, and Brazil that sent those fan bases into a frenzy. Then Australia, then Japan. Each announcement was met with celebration, with ticket countdowns, with fans in those regions marking their calendars and planning their lives around the shows. And in the United States? Silence. At first, fans told themselves to be patient. They're probably saving the US dates for last, someone posted in a Facebook group. Big reveal coming soon. Others pointed out that American tours usually required more lead time, more venue coordination, more logistical planning. It made sense to announce international dates first, right? But as the days passed and the silence stretched on, patience turned to unease. Unease turned to worry. Worry turned to something sharper. When the full tour poster finally dropped, a beautifully designed graphic listing every confirmed date, every city, every country, American fans scanned it with the kind of desperation you reserve for searching a list of survivors. And there it was, undeniable and crushing. Not a single US city. Not Los Angeles, where they'd played to roaring crowds. Not New York, where they'd made their American debut. Not Chicago, Miami, Boston, or any of the dozens of cities where fans had already started imagining themselves in those theater seats, singing along to songs they'd loved for years. The absence wasn't just disappointing, it was baffling. How do you announce a world tour and skip the United States entirely? How do you build a career on the support of American audiences and then offer them nothing, not even an explanation? Fans began comparing the tour map to previous years, noting how cities that had been staples of past tours were now conspicuously absent. They zoomed in on the poster, hoping maybe they'd missed something, that maybe a second image would appear, with the US dates everyone was expecting. But there was no second image. There was no clarification. There was just the tour as it stood, and the glaring, inexplicable void where America should have been. What made it worse was the lack of communication. No statement from the management team. No acknowledgement from Piero, Ignazio, or Gianluca that they understood how this looked. No stay tuned or more dates coming soon to give fans something to hold on to. Just the dates that existed and the dates that didn't, and a growing sense that someone, somewhere, had made a decision that fans were never going to be given the chance to understand. Expectations, when left unmet, don't just disappear, they transform. In this case, they transformed into questions no one seemed willing to answer. And in the absence of answers, fans did what fans always do. They filled the silence with their own theories, their own fears, and their own heartbreak. The emotional weight of that omission is hard to overstate if you've never been part of a fan base like this. To outsiders, it might seem like an overreaction. After all, it's just a concert, just a tour, just a band. But to the women who've followed Il Volo for 15 years, who've built friendships around this music, who've planned vacations and spent savings and marked anniversaries by which tour was happening that year, this wasn't just anything. This was a betrayal that cut straight to the heart of what it means to be loyal, to show up, to believe that your support matters. Scroll through the comments on any Il Volo announcement from that week, and you'll see the same themes repeating over and over like a chorus of grief. We've been here since the beginning. How could they forget us? I've seen them 12 times. I was already planning my trip. Now what? Do we not matter anymore? The questions weren't rhetorical. They were genuine, desperate attempts to make sense of something that didn't add up. And beneath the questions was something even more painful: the fear that maybe, just maybe, American fans had been taken for granted. Consider what it means to be a US-based Il Volo fan. You don't have the luxury of proximity. You can't hop on a train to see them perform in Rome or catch a quick flight to Barcelona for a weekend show. For most American fans, seeing Il Volo requires planning, sacrifice, and often significant expense. You book time off work. You arrange childcare. You save up for months because tickets, travel, and hotels add up quickly. And you do it willingly, joyfully, because the experience is worth it. But that also means you're dependent on the tours actually coming to you. When they don't, when entire regions are bypassed without explanation, the options become painfully limited. Spend thousands of dollars to fly to another continent, or miss out entirely. That's not a choice most people can make. And the fans who can't afford international travel are left feeling not just excluded, but erased. The tour poster becomes a map of places they'll never go, a reminder that their geography, something entirely out of their control, has turned into a barrier between them and the music they love. It's one thing to miss a show because tickets sold out or because life got in the way. It's another thing entirely to be told, implicitly or otherwise, that your entire country wasn't worth including. And then there's the comparison problem. Fans in Europe saw multiple dates in countries smaller than Texas. Latin American fans got tours through cities that, while passionate and deserving, didn't have the same history of sold-out US venues that American fans could point to. The math didn't add up. If Il Volo could justify 3 nights in Italy and 2 in Argentina, why couldn't they justify even 1 stop in New York? Why were some fan bases celebrated with abundance while others were left with nothing? The emotional response wasn't entitlement. It was confusion born from love. These fans didn't expect special treatment. They expected equal treatment. They expected to be remembered. And when they weren't, the disappointment wasn't just about missing a concert. It was about feeling invisible to the very artists they'd spent years making feel seen. Social media became the pressure valve for all that emotion, and it didn't take long for the floodgates to open. Within hours of the tour announcement, fan groups across Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube exploded with reactions that ranged from bewildered to furious. Comment sections became digital town halls where fans vented, speculated, and sought solidarity from others who felt the same crushing disappointment. The volume of responses was staggering. Not just a few complaints here and there, but wave after wave of heartfelt messages that painted a picture of a fan base in crisis. "I don't understand how they can call this a world tour," one fan wrote. Her comment liked hundreds of times within the first hour. "We've been supporting them for over a decade. Don't we deserve at least an explanation?" Another chimed in. "I had money saved. I had my dates requested off work. I've been waiting 6 months for this. And now, nothing?" The posts kept coming, each one a variation on the same theme: disbelief, hurt, and a desperate need for someone, anyone to acknowledge what was happening. Theories spread like wildfire. Some fans speculated that Il Volo's management had shifted focus toward international markets where classical crossover was more mainstream. Others wondered if poor ticket sales in previous years had made US tours financially unviable, though that theory was quickly challenged by fans who remembered sold-out shows and long waiting lists. A darker rumor suggested internal conflicts or health issues that might prevent extensive travel, though there was no evidence to support it. In the absence of official information, every possibility felt equally plausible, and the speculation only deepened the sense of unease. What made the backlash so intense wasn't anger. It was heartbreak dressed up as frustration. Fans weren't calling for boycotts or turning their backs on the trio. They were pleading to be seen, to be heard, to be given some indication that their years of support hadn't been for nothing. "We love you," one comment read, "but it feels like you don't love us back." Another, "All we're asking for is honesty. Just tell us what's going on." The language used in these posts is telling. Words like betrayed, forgotten, abandoned, and heartbroken appeared again and again, not as hyperbole, but as genuine expressions of emotional pain. For these fans, Il Volo isn't just a band, they're a relationship. And like any relationship, when communication breaks down and one side feels neglected, the hurt runs deep. The comments weren't just about missing a concert, they were about feeling like a promise had been broken, like the mutual respect and loyalty that had defined this fan base for years had suddenly become one-sided. And then there were the quieter voices, the ones that didn't demand answers, but simply expressed sadness. "I guess I won't get to see them again," someone wrote. "This might be it for me." Those comments were the hardest to read because they carried a finality that the angry posts didn't. They came from fans who had reached the end of their hope, who were beginning to accept that maybe this chapter of their lives was closing whether they were ready for it or not. But here's where the story gets complicated. The fan perspective, as valid and deeply felt as it is, doesn't tell the whole story. Touring is a business, and businesses operate according to logic that doesn't always align with emotional fairness. To understand why US dates might be missing from Il Volo's 2026 tour, you have to step back from the heartbreak and look at the cold, hard realities of the music industry. Realities that artists and their teams navigate every single day, often in ways that fans never see. Venue availability is one of the biggest logistical challenges in touring, and it's more complicated than most people realize. Major theaters and performance halls book their calendars months, sometimes years, in advance. If Il Volo's team approached venues for a spring 2026 tour, they might have found that the ideal spaces were already claimed by other acts, Broadway runs, or corporate events. Securing a venue isn't just about wanting to play there. It's about timing, availability, and competition. And if the right venues aren't available, the choice becomes either settling for less than ideal locations or waiting until better options open up. Then there's cost. Touring in the United States is expensive, far more expensive than many fans realize. Between crew salaries, equipment transport, venue rentals, marketing, and accommodations, a single tour leg can run into the millions of dollars. For those costs to make sense, ticket sales have to justify them. If Il Volo's management looked at projected sales figures and determined that a US tour wouldn't be profitable enough to offset the expense, they might have decided to prioritize markets where the return on investment was more guaranteed. That doesn't mean American fans don't matter. It means the financial risk was too high given current market conditions. There's also the question of strategy. Il Volo's team might be building the tour in phases, starting with regions where demand is most concentrated and adding additional legs later based on response and availability. This approach isn't uncommon. Many artists announce tours incrementally, testing the waters before committing to every possible market. It's possible that US dates were always part of the plan but weren't finalized in time for the initial announcement. In that scenario, the absence isn't a snub, it's a delay, one that might resolve itself once contracts are signed and logistics are locked in. Artist health and scheduling also play a role that fans don't always consider. Piero, Ignazio, and Gianluca are no longer the teenagers who could perform every night without consequence. They're professionals balancing demanding careers with personal lives, and extensive touring takes a toll. If their team determined that adding a US leg would push them beyond a sustainable schedule, the responsible decision might have been to scale back rather than risk burnout or vocal strain. Fans want to see their favorite artists perform, but they also want those artists to have long, healthy careers. And sometimes those two desires are in tension. None of this is to say that the fan reaction was wrong or unjustified, but it is to say that the absence of US dates might not be personal, even though it feels that way. The music industry operates according to constraints that have nothing to do with love or loyalty, and everything to do with money, logistics, and sustainability. Understanding that doesn't erase the disappointment, but it does add necessary context to a situation that felt, from the fan side, like it could only be explained by neglect. So here's the question that matters most. Are Il Volo really ignoring their American fans, or is something else going on beneath the surface? The answer, frustratingly, is that we don't know for certain, because the silence from official channels has left room for interpretation, and interpretation rarely favors the absent party. But if we're being fair, if we're looking at the full picture rather than just the emotional snapshot, the evidence suggests that ignoring is probably the wrong word. Il Volo's history with American audiences is too long, too rich, and too mutually beneficial to be dismissed overnight. They've spent 15 years building a reputation in the US, and that reputation wasn't built on exploitation. It was built on genuine connection. The trio has spoken warmly about their American fans in countless interviews, expressing gratitude for the support that helped launch their international careers. That kind of affection doesn't just evaporate because a tour announcement goes sideways. More likely, what we're seeing is a mismatch between fan expectations and industry realities, compounded by a communication failure that turned confusion into hurt. Misinformation hasn't helped. In the vacuum left by official silence, rumors have taken on a life of their own, some more plausible than others. Claims that Il Volo has given up on the US market ignore the fact that their previous American tours were successful by most measurable standards. Speculation that they've been banned from certain venues or cities is baseless and distracts from the more mundane explanations rooted in scheduling and finance. When emotions run high, it's easy to latch onto narratives that validate how we feel, even if those narratives aren't supported by facts. What's harder to dismiss is the emotional impact of how this was handled. Even if the absence of US dates is entirely explainable, entirely justified, the way it was communicated, or rather, the way it wasn't, did real damage. Fans didn't need a detailed breakdown of financial projections or venue contracts. They just needed acknowledgement. A simple statement saying, "We know many of you are disappointed not to see US dates yet. We're working on it and we'll share more information as soon as we can," would have gone a long way towards softening the blow. Instead, the silence felt like indifference, and indifference is the one thing loyal fans can't forgive. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Il Volo likely aren't ignoring their American supporters, but their team underestimated how deeply the absence of US dates would resonate. They might have assumed fans would understand, would wait patiently, would trust that more announcements were coming. But trust requires communication, and communication requires effort. When that effort isn't made, even the most loyal fans start to wonder if their loyalty has been misplaced. And yet, despite everything, despite the disappointment, the confusion, the hurt, there's still hope flickering in the corners of fan communities. Because here's the thing about tour announcements. They're not always final. Artists add dates all the time, expanding tours based on demand, availability, or strategic opportunities that arise after the initial rollout. It's happened before, and it could happen again. The question is whether Il Volo's team is listening, and whether they understand that the demand is there, waiting to be met. Look at the history of touring in general, and you'll find countless examples of artists who announced truncated schedules only to expand them later. Sometimes it's because ticket sales in announced markets exceeded expectations, creating financial runway for additional legs. Sometimes it's because venues that were previously unavailable suddenly open up. Sometimes it's because fan outcry makes it clear that leaving certain regions off the tour would be a missed opportunity, both artistically and financially. If Il Volo's management is paying attention to the response their announcement received, they'd be hard-pressed to ignore the chorus of American fans begging to be included. There's also strategic logic to staying quiet about future plans. If contracts are still being negotiated, if venues are in discussion but not yet confirmed, announcing maybe dates would create more problems than it solves. Fans would lock in those tentative dates, make plans, and then be devastated if the shows fell through. Better to stay silent until everything is finalized, even if that silence creates short-term pain. It's not the most emotionally intelligent approach, but it is the legally and logistically safest one. Some fans are holding on to this hope with both hands. "I refuse to believe they'd skip us entirely," one posted in a group. "They have to know we're here. They have to know we're waiting." Others are more cautious, tempering their expectations to avoid further disappointment. "I'll believe it when I see the official announcement," someone else wrote. "Until then, I'm not getting my hopes up." Both responses are valid. Both protect the heart in different ways. What's undeniable is the power of fan demand. In an industry increasingly driven by data and engagement, the flood of comments, posts, and messages didn't go unnoticed. Tour promoters monitor social media closely, tracking sentiment and measuring interest. If the outcry over missing US dates was loud enough, and it was, it's entirely possible that conversations are happening behind the scenes right now, that deals are being explored, that someone in Il Volo's camp is working to find a way to make this right. Hope isn't foolish when it's rooted in evidence of past patterns, and the pattern here suggests that where there's demand, tours tend to follow. So where does that leave us, standing here in the emotional aftermath of an announcement that felt more like a gut punch than a celebration? It leaves us in the messy, uncertain space between disappointment and possibility, between hurt and hope, between what fans expected and what they got. There are no clean answers here, no satisfying resolutions that tie everything up neatly. What we have instead is a story still unfolding, one that asks difficult questions about loyalty, communication, and what it means to feel valued by the artists you love. Il Volo's relationship with their American fans has always been built on mutual respect, on the understanding that both sides showed up for each other when it mattered. Fans showed up with their wallets, their time, their unwavering support through every album cycle and career pivot. Il Volo showed up with their voices, their humility, their genuine appreciation for the audiences that believed in them. That foundation doesn't crumble overnight, but it can crack when one side feels like the other stopped listening. And right now, American fans are standing in that crack, wondering if it can be repaired, or if this is the beginning of a permanent fracture. The disappointment is real, the hurt is valid, but so is the history, the years of connection, that can't be erased by a single tour announcement gone wrong. If Il Volo's team is smart, if they understand what's at stake, they'll find a way to bridge the gap. Whether that's through added tour dates, transparent communication, or simply acknowledging that they hear the voices calling out from across the ocean. And if American fans are patient, if they can hold on to hope a little longer, there's a chance this story ends differently than it feels like it will right now. Because the truth is, disappointment only cuts this deep when it comes from love. Casual fans don't write essays in comment sections. Casual fans don't stay up refreshing tour pages. Casual fans don't spend 15 years showing up again and again because they believe in something bigger than a concert. The intensity of the reaction to missing US dates isn't about entitlement. It's about heartbreak. And heartbreak means something mattered enough to break your heart in the first place. Maybe more dates are coming. Maybe they're not. Maybe the explanation, when it finally arrives, will make perfect sense. Or maybe it won't, and fans will have to decide whether they can make peace with being left out this time. But whatever happens next, this moment has already revealed something important. That the bond between Il Volo and their American supporters was deep enough, strong enough, and real enough to make its absence feel like a loss. And in a world where so much of fandom is transactional, where loyalty is often performative and fleeting, that kind of connection, messy and painful as it is right now, is still worth something. The question now is whether everyone involved can remember that before it's too late. We want to hear from you. When you saw the tour dates announced, what went through your mind? Are you in the US, still hoping for dates to be added? Or are you watching from another part of the world, trying to understand what all the emotion is about? Drop a comment below and let us know where you're from and how you're feeling. Whether you're holding on to hope or you've made peace with disappointment, your voice matters in this conversation. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about tour dates. It's about what it means to love something deeply and wonder if that love still goes both ways.